The boundarylessness of society does a really good job at pulling people very far outside of themselves. At this point along my journey of healing, one of the most important things I have realized is that when you don't know who you are, when you feel lost, say, right? What happens often is you easily give yourself to different ideas or different ideologies, right? And what's interesting about this is that I would argue that trauma, especially trauma that happens very early on in life, is a big contributor to this. The way that this works is that, and I'm not going to say that anybody, goes left without trauma. It's just that trauma can cause a person to be seriously lost within themselves, not know who they are, right? Um, it's very easy for trauma to create an experience of life for you where you just don't know who you are. And here's what I see happening: conformity has a very strong pull. This is what I see happening with many people. Conformity has a very strong pull, for starters, first and foremost. And with that, we feel like we want to belong, obviously, right? We do things to not feel alone, to not feel lonely, and as a result of that, we do things um, to feel a sense of belonging. As a result of this, we can easily get pulled outside of what's actually authentic for us. When you don't know who you are, you can be very easily sold on things that are actually not authentic to you just because somebody's telling you that it's necessary. Trauma, especially that occurs early on in life, can tell you so much more about yourself than anything anybody is trying to sell you, any idea of who you can be that anyone's trying to sell you. Any person, if they can come to understand that what's necessary is a returning to self of authenticity, what the person wants, not what society wants for them, not what society thinks they should be, not what society is telling them that they've lost or that they lack, what the person wants. And I personally believe that nobody will ever be happier than the state of them being authentic to who they are. And now I'm not going to say that society doesn't want that for people, even though it's kind of hard to say that. What I will say, however, is that society tries to sell people on this idea that this or that is what they need, when really a returning to the self, a returning to, authenticity, meditation, sitting with the self and listening to the self. All of these different constructs that society has created for what the self is, whatever you want to call it, labels. It goes into what it means to be a man, what it means to be a woman, this, that, and the other, how to be a man, how to be a woman. Um, but the most important thing that I would argue a person can do is bring all of their awareness back to themselves. First and foremost, tune out all outside noise, all of it. Then bring the awareness back to the self and sit with the self for a long time, because the boundarylessness of society tends to pull people outside of themselves. You need this, you need that. This is what I see happening with people. Instead of recognizing that they have pain from trauma that happened very early on in life, They carry around the pain and they think that something's wrong with them, and therefore, as a result of that, they don't feel whole, obviously, and they look externally for answers. Now, it's not always a bad thing to look externally for answers, because oftentimes, externally will oftentimes just bring you back internally, and that's beneficial. However, when you're looking externally, and externally is telling you, yeah, the answer to your problem, it's over here. No. No. Um, People hold the answers to their problems, and very oftentimes the answers have to do with what traumatized them very early on in life. One of the most important things that a person can do for themselves, it doesn't matter how much or how little they were traumatized, one of the most important things a person can do for themselves is understand what it is that messed them up, understand their trauma. Because this sense of, lost that some people feel, the sense of emptiness that some people feel, the feeling of being fractured, of not being whole, right? Of there being, glitches in the system and everything, right? Um, when you bring your awareness back to yourself and you put that first, it transforms everything. Now, I'm not trying to say, negate masculinity, negate femininity, negate, um, manhood, womanhood, whatever it is. What I am saying, however, is that one of the most important things to look at here in terms of how you feel about yourself is trauma from early on in life. Because it's the difference between knowing yourself and not knowing yourself. And that's just the way that this works. So this is what I see people doing. I see people thinking that the answer to their pain, the answer to their problems, is outside of themselves. Unless whatever it is outside of you is telling you to look within, it's probably steering you and leading you astray.